I want to invite you to go through those doors after service is done because Lee has a great art exhibit in there and you'll want to go see that. So make sure you visit that sometime today or during this next month. It'll be there all month long. Let me stop for a second and tell about the people in the hospital. Patrika is likely coming home today after more than 3 weeks in the hospital. Sandra may have gotten moved on Saturday. I haven't checked with her into a care center, and that's a good thing. Step up with that. Kay is improving, so just keep them all surrounded in prayers. You need it in a space like that, don't you? Because a space like that drives you into all those places of not quite peace, right? And as I'm rushing between those two things, between those two people over at the University Medical Center, Sandra and Kay, I'm running along, and all of a sudden I see this thing that made me stop. Right, in that place of so much busyness, I see this thing that says Transplant Financial Services. And it made me stop because I thought, wow, I didn't even know there was a department like that. But you need it, don't you? If you're getting a transplant or just about any other procedure in a hospital, don't you need help with that? And one of the things that they do well in a hospital is they try to figure out how they can help those people not have to worry about some things. There's a lot of people that are there whose job it is to take away some of the worries so that those people can have some peace to deal with what is there. And they need that, don't they? We need that, don't we? Because how many know that for the last little while we've been living in a slightly unpeaceful space that hasn't been simple for us. Especially this last month has been a month of facing our fears and trying to figure out what do we do next, how do we move forward, what do we do to take the next steps, the important next steps of what to do. And some people have come up to me during that time and they said, we need time to grieve. And I don't want to diminish the grieving process. I don't mean to do that at all, but I don't think grief is the most important response in this moment. Because that's, in some ways, stopping our movement towards what has to happen next. Too often in grief, we withdraw into that quiet space where everything's okay for me. But what needs to happen is we need to figure out how to bring that peace into the world. Because it is more than just me that needs that peace. Our world needs to discover peace in this moment. And I believe that the work that is called for, the step that is needed right now, emerges out of that peace that we find in those quiet moments. And we need to have done that quiet work. But that's not the peace that is needed right now. The peace that is needed now is an active peace that moves us out from that space where we discovered a solidness of God present with us. And we have to carry that peace of God into this world. Because right now this world needs that peace more than anything. It has to be a solid stillness of spirit that is grounded in the peace of God being with us, that then moves into the world and announces that peace in the midst of all the turbulence and turmoil and struggle that is out there. We need to carry that into the active work that is in front of us, because this moment calls for an active peace, not a quiet peace. An active peace such as Martin Luther King exhibited, Mahatma Gandhi brought active peace. That's what we need. We need that type of active, embodied peace that carries us from this space and blesses the world all around us. Those two movements changed our world completely, didn't they? Not because they were simple or easy or because they felt peaceful, but because of how those two lived their life. They changed our world. Right? They brought peace where peace didn't exist. And that's what we need, isn't it? They changed hearts and changed lives, and that's what needs to happen right now. The Canticle of Turning says this. It asks this question: could the world be about to turn? That's the question we should be asking. And yet, sometimes in this space, we sit there fearful of what could happen, fearful of, and instead of seeing what is about to happen. Isaiah sat in the same type of space like that. Isaiah, which is actually 3 books, and we'll talk about the other books later, but the first part of Isaiah happened during the time when the northern kingdom of Israel was being destroyed. And Isaiah, who sat in the southern kingdom, was looking and seeing, wow, what's going to happen to us? It was a place of disrest, of turbulence and turmoil. And he had to figure out, how does he bring some sense of peace? And he gave us this vision, this amazing vision that seems beyond any of us. How can this possibly happen, that lion and lambs lay down together? How can that ever come about, that a little child will lead these wild animals? And from our perspective, it's hard to see that that is a possibility. But if we don't believe that more than the turbulence, all we'll ever get to is turbulence. We have to let that vision of what can be, what God speaks into this world, be stronger within us than what seems to be true in this moment. And that's difficult work. For example, it says that the lion shall eat straw like the ox. How many know that neither the lion nor the ox eat straw? They don't. An ox eats things like hay. Straw is what they lie down in. And Isaiah probably knew that, so he probably didn't write it that way. He probably said something like hay, but the translators got it wrong somewhere along the lines because they weren't quite as knowledgeable. But nobody eats straw. And I like actually the mistake, because it reminds me that in moving towards peace, we all have to figure out how to eat straw. How to eat something we don't understand, how to be in places that aren't comfortable to us, how to move towards what it is that right now doesn't seem like it can be the answer. And we have to trust that that other person over there is also doing that. That we're moving into that central space where together we can find peace and become peace. So we can find that new space and not be afraid of it. And the problem is that sometimes we are so busy being against each other that we don't move together towards each other into that space. God is drawing us toward something, somehow making us move forward. Brian McLaren called it the great spiritual migration. That we're moving, becoming something. And to do that right, we have to know peace, so that we can move into that space, that scary space between us, and in that space emerge into something more than what we thought we could be. And we have to know that that is already happening. That it's not just a future vision, but that God is working in us to bring that vision to pass, and working in them. God's moving. And we have to figure out how to grasp hold of that vision and believe it so well that we move into it. Peace is as much a task as a gift. Is that our reading? As much a task as a gift. But we have to sometimes be calm as earth, sometimes be fluid as water, and sometimes be blazing as fire. Each a movement of peace. But we have to figure out when to do which. Otherwise, we don't bring that peace that is necessary. Phyllis Tickle called this time the Great Emergence. This is the name of a book she wrote. It's a marvelous book about emerging into what can be, what we will be. And the only way, she said, to understand what is currently happening to us is first to understand that about every 500 years, the church feels compelled to hold a giant rummage sale. And then we have to sell off stuff that's not working as well. If you remember 500 years ago, back in the 1500s, you'll remember what that was called. It's called the Great Reformation. Right? Where Martin Luther and other reformers stood up and said, we have to be something different. And what's amazing about that, both the Protestant church, the new church, emerged, and a better Catholic church emerged from that time. We go 500 years before that, we get to what's called the Great Schism, where the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church is split. And both emerged stronger and better from that schism. We go 500 years before that, we come to the time of Gregory the Great, who was the first pope who was also a monk. And that was the time where monasticism began to become strong, and it carried us through the Dark Ages. The church might not have emerged if that hadn't have happened. And 500 years before that, there just happened to be a guy named Jesus around. And we can go back 500 and 500 years, and we can see other times, each one asking us to emerge differently than what we had been. And now is that type of time. Christianity, says Phyllis Tickle, becomes an intolerable carapace that must be shattered in order that renewal and new growth may occur. She says 3 things happen. Always after this time, a new vital form of Christianity emerges. And the old institutional thing that was there renews itself and becomes something wonderful. And the faith has spread dramatically because of that. You see, we're on the verge of saying, what can this be? What can religion in America and the world be? What can the leading of God bring us to? What's our next identity as human beings in the religious world? We get to help be that. We get to help define how we move forward into that. And I believe that you, right here at St. Francis, have made the types of choices that make you the perfect leaders to go into what's next. Right? So I have 3 questions just to make sure that you are right. First of all, do you believe God is present and active in our world today? Yes. That's good, because that's the first thing you need to know. Because in a moment like this, it's really easy to say God left us somewhere back there. God is active. God is present. Do you believe that what we've done in the past, the things that St. Francis has been, have been the right movements towards where we need to go? Yes. See? You're already moving right. The third question is, does our message now speak to a future that needs to happen? Yes. And we need to speak that message louder than we've ever spoken it. We need to be active in this world in so many ways and in so many places so that we can be part of this great spiritual migration, this great emergence of what God can be in the future. We need to be active voices in that space. Peace Pilgrim says, one little person giving all their time to peace makes news. Many people giving some of their time can make history. That's your job, is to make history right now. And you know how to do it already, but we must be active in bringing that piece of what we have found here into that world which needs it so well. There's a lot of places where you can do it. You did a great job, Diane, telling us about what was at the YWCA. See, I got the W. Yeah. Right? Just want to make sure. And you need to, Some of you will find your voice in that We Stand for Peace place, where you provide a space of peace for somebody or some group. You need to do that. It could also be that you stand with Standing Rock. There's lots of places to do that. Ron Ferris, the name on our prayer list that you prayed, that's Shar's brother who's going up there this week. Pray for him as he goes up there. Pray for all that's going on there so that somehow out of that something will emerge that's different and better than what we've had before. At Southside on Thursday at 7 o'clock, and I'm sorry I won't be able to be there because I have to be here for our longest night service. But if you can be there, they're going to do a session on strengthening sanctuary, about how to become a space of sanctuary for those who are in this moment threatened or fearful. That's a place we need to be present and active. JFON is a new group that's forming here in Tucson. It's Justice for Our Neighbors. And there's JFONs across the nation, but this is a place where JFON needs to be. And they'll be right here at St. Francis tomorrow. And it's a space that's a legal clinic for those who are facing immigration issues, right? So this is a new voice that is coming and saying, we need to do something, become something. What will you do? Rob Bell wrote a book called How to Be Here, and he meant here in this moment. And he asked 3 questions. He says, how are you going to respond to this life you've been given? What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to make here? This is our opportunity to be the voice we say we've been. This is our opportunity to speak into the world in such a way that we bring peace and healing and love into these spaces which right now threaten to become all the opposite of those things. There's a lot of people reacting in fear. We get to choose to react in peace. We get to choose to bring that peace into this moment and to change the world because of it. If you do that, we'll emerge into something incredible. You see, in that other great emergence, Jesus sat with 12 people, and likely more than 12, from all different places, all different spaces of political beliefs and ideas and religions, and he said, no, we can sit together at this table. From this space of a space where we could seemingly hate each other and be divided, in this space of peace, we can discover how to change the world. And 2,000 years later, we are still changed, aren't we? What we make, the decisions we make, the choices we move forward in, the active peace that we carry into the world will change us and change this world just as surely as that moment did. So listen to God. Carry that peace. Change the world. I am with you always, even the end of the age. Here's the promise of peace, of love, of hope. Will my servers please come forward?